Commander Hyen stood on the bridge of his patrol vessel, staring at the screen in disbelief. Taiyang Colony should have been visible by now, its lights twinkling against the darkness of space. Instead, there was only an eerie orange glow where the settlement used to be. "Sir, we're not receiving any response to our hails," reported Lieutenant Jiwan from the communication station. Her voice carried a hint of worry that she tried to hide. Hyan had been making supply runs to Taiyang for 3 years. He knew the colony administrator personally. They had 40,000 people down there, families and children, scientists and farmers building a new life on the frontier world of Epsilon 7. Someone should have answered by now. "Take us in closer," Hyen ordered. Full sensor sweep. As the patrol vessel descended through the atmosphere, the truth became impossible to deny. The colony was gone. Not abandoned, not evacuated, but utterly destroyed. Where residential blocks once stood, there were now fields of melted metal and glass. The agricultural domes had been vaporized. The spaceport was a crater half a mile wide. The landing party suited up in silence. Nobody wanted to say what they were all thinking. Hyen led them down to the surface, stepping carefully through the ash and debris. The ground was still warm beneath their boots. "Even though whatever happened here must have occurred days ago, Commander, you need to see this," called out Ensign Minho. The young officer was kneeling beside a twisted piece of metal that didn't look like anything human-made. It was covered in strange markings and still hummed with residual energy. Hyen studied the fragment carefully. In all his years of service, he had never seen anything like it. Humanity had been exploring space for 2 centuries, but they had never encountered another intelligent species. Until now, apparently. "Bag it," Hyen said quietly. "Mark the location and scan for more." They found more evidence as they searched through the ruins. Burn patterns that suggested directed energy weapons far more advanced than human technology. Impact craters from kinetic strikes that had come from orbit. And everywhere, the complete absence of bodies. Whatever killed these people had been thorough, in what remained of the Colonial Administration building. They discovered a data core partially intact in a reinforced vault. Giwan worked on it for hours, while the rest of the team continued their grim search. Finally, she called Hyen over. "I've got something, sir." The colony's final transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Administrator Park, man Hyen had shared drinks with just 3 months ago. Park's face was covered in blood, and his eyes were wide with terror. "This is Taiyang Colony broadcasting emergency distress on all channels. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. They appeared without warning from quantum space. Multiple ships, massive firepower. Our defenses are gone. They're not responding to any communication. They're just killing us. They're killing everyone. Please, if anyone receives this, tell Earth what happened here. Tell them The transmission ended in a burst of static and light. The landing party stood in silence for a long moment. Hyen felt a cold rage building in his chest, but he forced it down. He had a job to do. "Collect all the evidence we can carry," he ordered. "I want samples of those weapon impacts, all alien fragments, and this data core. We're taking everything back to Earth Command." As they loaded the evidence onto the patrol vessel, Hyen took one last look at the ruins of Taiyang Colony. 40,000 people had lived here. They had been farmers and teachers, engineers and artists. They had come to the frontier seeking a better life. Something had murdered every single one of them. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Hyen spent most of that time staring at the recovered data, trying to make sense of it. The attack had lasted less than an hour from start to finish. The unknown ships had used weapons that made human military technology look primitive. They had destroyed the colony's defenses in minutes, then systematically annihilated every structure and every person. When they finally reached Earth, Hyen went directly to fleet headquarters. Admiral Minho, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, listened to his report without interruption. When Hyen finished, the admiral sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. 40,000, Minho said softly. "All gone." "Yes, sir. And whoever did this had technology beyond ours. If they decide to attack Earth or the core colonies, I know, Minho interrupted. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ships in orbit around Earth. I'll brief the Council within the hour. This changes everything, Commander. First contact was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. Instead, it's our worst nightmare. Within hours, the news spread across human space. Emergency sessions were called in every colonial government. The United Earth Council convened for the first time in 3 years. News networks broadcast images of Taiyang's ruins to billions of shocked viewers. Haiyan watched from the gallery as the council debated. Some called for immediate military mobilization. Others argued for caution, suggesting the attack might have been a misunderstanding. A few even proposed trying to make peaceful contact with the unknown aliens. Counselor Yuanji stood and addressed the chamber. We must not rush into war. Perhaps we can still find a diplomatic solution. But Admiral Minho had other ideas. When he presented the evidence from Taiyang, when he showed Park's final terrified message, the mood in the chamber shifted. This was not a misunderstanding. This was murder. The vote came swiftly. The council authorized full military mobilization. Every shipyard would work around the clock. Every reserve unit would be activated. Humanity would find whoever destroyed Taiyang Colony. There would be a reckoning. As Haiyan left the council building that night, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the killers were still flying free, probably thinking they had gotten away with it. They had no idea what was coming for them. They had attacked the wrong species. 3 weeks after Taiyang fell, human space transformed into something it had never been before. Every orbital station hummed with activity. Shipyards that usually built cargo haulers and mining vessels now churned out warships. The mobilization was total and absolute. Lieutenant Sierra worked in a cramped laboratory deep inside, Fleet Intelligence headquarters on Mars around her. Dozens of scientists studied the alien fragments recovered from Taiyang. She had barely slept since the attack, running analysis after analysis on the strange metallic pieces. Got something, announced Dr. Kwan from across the lab. He gestured Sierra over to his workstation. I've matched the energy signature to a database entry from the Kepler Observatory. They detected similar readings from a system about 40 light-years from Taiyang, but dismissed it as cosmic background noise. Sierra pulled up the data and felt her pulse quicken. This isn't noise. These readings show multiple ships using quantum drives far more efficient than ours. If we cross-reference with other observatory data, she worked through the night, building a picture from fragments of information gathered over decades. The aliens, whoever they were, had been active in this region of space for at least 50 years. Their ships had been detected at least a dozen times near human colonies, but always at extreme range and never for long. By morning, Sierra had a name: the Vekran Collective. Ancient archives from Earth mentioned them in a single intercepted alien transmission, decoded years ago, but filed away as unimportant. The transmission had been a warning from another species, now presumably extinct. Describing a race of predators who conquered and enslaved weaker civilizations, Admiral Minho read Sierra's report with a grim expression. 12 other species destroyed, and we're number 13. They follow a pattern, sir, Sierra explained, pointing to her analysis. They hit isolated colonies first, testing defenses. Then they harvest whatever resources remain. Finally, they move on to the next target. Taiyang fits their profile perfectly. Then they'll come back, Minho said. They'll want to strip Taiyang of whatever's left. Yes, sir. Probably within the next few weeks. Minho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. Then we'll be waiting. Captain Doyon commanded the stealth frigate Silent Arrow, one of humanity's most advanced reconnaissance vessels. His ship could hide from almost any sensor known to exist, and his crew were the best in the fleet. When Minho called him to headquarters, Doyon knew he was getting a special assignment. I need you to track them, Minho said, spreading a star chart across his desk. When they come to Taiyang, you follow them home. I want to know where they live, where they build their ships, where they keep their families. Everything. Doyen nodded. And if they detect us, they won't. But if they do, you run. We need that information more than we need heroes. The Silent Arrow took position in deep space near Taiyang, powered down to almost nothing, waiting. Doyon and his crew played cards and read books and tried not to think about the fact that they were bait in a trap for alien killers. On the 18th day, the Vecren came. 6 massive ships dropped out of quantum space right above Taiyang's ruins. Doyen watched them through his sensors, recording everything. The Vecren vessels were ugly things, all sharp angles and exposed weapons. They moved with confidence, clearly not expecting any resistance. For 2 days, the Vecren ships descended to Taiyang's surface and back up again, harvesting metal and equipment from the ruins. Doyon watched them picking through the remains of 40,000 lives, like scavengers on a corpse. He wanted to attack, wanted to fire every weapon his ship carried, but he held back. The mission was more important than revenge. When the Vecren finally powered up their quantum drives to leave, Doyen was ready. The silent arrow attached a micro-beacon to the hull of the largest ship, then followed them into quantum space. Staying hidden in their drive wake, the journey took them through 4 different star systems. At each one, Doyen mapped Vecren installations, ship movements, and defensive positions. He saw shipyards churning out more of those ugly warships. He saw supply convoys moving between colonies. He saw a civilization built on conquest and slavery. Using technology stolen from the species they had destroyed, finally, on the 7th day, the Vecren fleet arrived at their homeworld. Doyen couldn't believe what his sensors were showing. Vecren Prime was surrounded by thousands of ships, orbital stations, and defensive platforms. It would be a nightmare to attack. But he also saw something else. The Vecren were spread thin. Their empire covered 18 different star systems, and they didn't have enough ships to properly defend all of them. They relied on fear and superior technology to keep conquered species in line. Doyen recorded everything, then carefully backed the silent arrow away from Vecren space. The journey home took 3 weeks of flying dark and quiet, but they made it. When Doyen arrived at Earth, he went straight to Admiral Minho's office and dumped 400 hours of reconnaissance data on his desk. "We can beat them," Doyen said simply. "They're strong, but they're overextended. Hit them everywhere at once, and they'll crumble." Minho studied the data for hours, then called together his strategic staff. They worked through the night, building a battle plan unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. An attack across 18 star systems simultaneously, coordinated to the second. When the plan was complete, Minho presented it to the United Earth's Council. Counselor Yunji stood and objected, arguing for one more attempt at diplomacy. "We should try to communicate," she pleaded. "Perhaps we can negotiate, find a peaceful solution." Admiral Minho played Administrator Park's final message one more time. The council watched Park's terrified face as he begged for help that never came. They saw the light of destruction flash across the screen. Then Minho spoke quietly. "These creatures have destroyed 12 civilizations. They attacked us without warning, without mercy, without even attempting contact. They murdered 40,000 of our people for sport and profit. There will be no negotiation. There will be no peace. There will only be justice." The vote was called. Every single council member voted yes. Mobilization shifted into a higher gear. Every fleet, every ship, every soldier prepared for the largest military operation in human history. Messages went out across all of human space. Calling ships home for the offensive, Captain Doyon stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking at Earth below. Somewhere down there, families mourned their dead from Taiyang. Children had lost parents. Parents had lost children. And now, finally, humanity was ready to answer. The gathering point was a region of empty space designated Staging Area, Omega, 2 light-years from the nearest Vecren outpost. For weeks, ships had been arriving from every corner of human civilization. Now, 2 months after Taiyang's destruction, the fleet was finally complete. Commander Haiyan had been promoted after his discovery of Taiyang's fate. Now he commanded the battlecruiser Retribution, a ship fresh from the yards with weapons that could crack a moon. He stood in his quarters, looking at a photograph of Administrator Park and his family, taken during happier times. The picture had survived somehow, found in the ruins by one of Haiyan's crew. Admiral Minho is beginning the address, announced his executive officer over the comm. Haiyan made his way to the bridge. On every screen, on every ship in the fleet, Admiral Minho appeared. The old officer looked tired, but his voice was strong and clear. 3,000 warships, Minho began. From every human colony, from every naval yard, from every corner of space we've claimed as home. You are the largest military force humanity has ever assembled. And you're here because 40,000 of our people were murdered without mercy. The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of crew members. The Vecran collective thought we were easy prey. They thought we would roll over and accept their attack. They were wrong. Today we teach them what happens when you attack humanity. Today we show them that we do not forget, we do not forgive, and we do not surrender. Haiyan felt the words settle into his bones like fire. Around him, his bridge crew stood straighter, their faces hardening with determination. We will strike at 18 systems simultaneously, Minho continued. Every Vecran shipyard, every military base, every command center will burn. But remember this, you are not murderers. You are soldiers of Earth and her colonies. When they surrender, we will accept it. When they flee, we will let them go. We are not the Vecran. We are better. The Admiral's image disappeared, replaced by tactical displays showing the fleet's organization. 3,000 ships divided into 18 battle groups, each assigned to a different Vecran system. Young Ensign Hannah sat in the cockpit of her fighter, nested in the belly of the carrier Defiant. She had only graduated from flight school 6 months ago. Now, she was about to fly into actual combat against an enemy that had destroyed 12 civilizations. Her hands were shaking as she ran through her pre-flight checks. The pilot and the fighter next to hers noticed and gave her a thumbs up through the canopy. Hannah tried to smile back, but her mouth was too dry. All pilots, this is Commander Yuna. Her squadron leader's voice came through the comm. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But remember your training. Stay with your wingmen, follow orders, and trust your instincts. We're going to get through this. In the marine decks of the assault ship Thunder, Sergeant Junho checked his squad's powered armor for what felt like the 100th time. Each piece of equipment had to be perfect. In combat, a faulty seal or a jammed weapon could mean death. His squad was young, mostly fresh from basic training. They talked too loud and made too many jokes trying to hide their fear. Junho let them. He had been in combat before, back during the Colonial Rebellion on Kepler IT-8. He knew what was coming. And he knew that some of these kids wouldn't make it home. Listen up, Junho called out, getting his squad's attention. When we hit dirt, you stay close to me. You watch your sectors. You don't try to be heroes. We go in, we complete our objective, we get out. Simple as that. Captain Sujin commanded the dreadnought Thunderhead, a massive ship armed with railguns that could punch through a mountain. Her vessel would lead the assault on the Vecran shipyards at Kepler 442, one of their most important industrial centers. She walked through her ship, talking to crew members, checking readiness reports, making sure everyone knew their jobs. The tension was thick enough to cut, but there was also a grim determination. Everyone had seen the footage from Taiyang. Everyone knew what they were fighting for. Lieutenant Sira had come along with the fleet as an intelligence advisor. She worked in the operations center of Admiral Minho's flagship Indomitable, coordinating reconnaissance data and updating tactical plans. Every few hours, stealth ships like Doyen's Silent Arrow would quantum jump in, transmit fresh intelligence on Vecran positions, then disappear again. They're not expecting us, Sira reported to Minho. Vecran fleet deployments haven't changed. They're still spread thin across their territory. Good, Minho replied. Let's keep it that way. Communications blackout remains in effect. No transmissions, no active scans, nothing that might alert them. The hours crawled by as the fleet made final preparations. Engineers checked every system. Gunners loaded weapons. Medical teams prepared for casualties. Chaplains held services for those who wanted them. Commander Haiyan stood on the bridge of the Retribution. Watching the countdown timer, In 3 hours, the fleet would jump to their attack positions. In 4 hours, the war would begin. He thought about Taiyang again, about Park and his family, about the 40,000 people who had died screaming, wondering why no one came to save them. Well, now humanity was coming. Not to save Taiyang, that chance was gone. But to make sure it never happened again, the final hour arrived. Admiral Minho appeared on every screen one last time. All ships, this is Minho. Prepare to jump on my mark. Remember who you fight for. Remember why we're here. And remember that we are human, and humans do not accept defeat. Mark. The space around staging area. Omega twisted and rippled as 3,000 ships activated their quantum drives simultaneously. For a moment, the fabric of reality itself seemed to tear as humanity's armada split into 18 battle groups, each heading for a different Vecran. System Hyene gripped the armrests of his command chair as the Retribution entered quantum space. The journey would take 2 hours. 2 hours to think about what was coming. 2 hours to prepare for war. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. They were professionals, every one of them. They would do their duty no matter what that cost. When the ship dropped out of quantum space at their target system, alarms immediately screamed warnings. Vecran ships detected, multiple hostiles, weapons locked on, but Hyan smiled. Because he wasn't alone. Appearing around him were 200 other human warships, all arriving at exactly the same moment. And across 17 other systems, the same thing was happening. The Vecran were about to learn that humanity was not prey. The Vecran had no warning. One moment, their ships patrolled quietly around their shipyards and colonies. The next, space itself seemed to explode with human warships dropping out of quantum space with weapons already firing. Captain Sujin's dreadnought Thunderhead led the assault on Kepler 442, home to the largest Vecran shipyard complex. Her railguns opened up at maximum range, sending tungsten slugs screaming through space at a fraction of light speed. The first Vecran cruiser didn't even have time to raise shields before it was torn in half. All batteries, fire at will, Sujin ordered calmly. Focus on military targets. Leave the civilian stations alone, unless they shoot at us. The space around the shipyards lit up with weapons fire. Human missiles streaked toward Vecran defense platforms, while laser batteries cut through enemy fighters like wheat before a scythe. The Vecran tried to organize a defense, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers and firepower. A Vecran destroyer managed to get a shot off at the Thunderhead. The energy beams scorched across Sujin's shields, dropping them to 70%. She didn't flinch. Target that destroyer. All forward guns. The Thunderhead's main batteries spoke as one. The destroyer vanished in a ball of expanding plasma. Sujin watched her tactical display. As human ships systematically destroyed every Vecran military vessel in the system, the shipyards themselves, those massive structures that could build the weapons that killed Taiyang, were torn apart by concentrated fire. Within 2 hours, the Vecran's industrial capacity at Kepler 442 was reduced to debris. Above the Vecran colony world of Proxima 7, Ensign Hannah launched from her carrier, along with 200 other fighters. Her hands had stopped shaking once the action started. Now there was no time for fear, only training and instinct. Blue Squadron, form up on me. Commander Yuna's voice crackled through her helmet. We've got enemy fighters coming up from the planet. Engage and destroy. Hana's sensors lit up with targets. Vecran interceptors, sleek and fast, rising to meet the human assault. She picked a target, locked her missiles, and fired. The Vecran pilot tried to evade, but Hannah's missile was too fast, too smart. It connected, and the enemy fighter disintegrated. The dogfight became a chaotic swirl of ships, energy beams, and explosions. Hannah lost sight of her wingmen, then found him again, then watched in horror as a Vecran fighter got behind him and fired. Her wingman's ship tumbled away, trailing fire. Rage filled her. Hannah swung her fighter around, ignoring every rule about staying in formation, and chased down the Vecran who had killed her friend. She fired everything she had. The enemy ship tried to escape, but Hannah was faster. Her guns tore through its engines and it spun away, dead in space. When the fight was over, the sky above Proxima 7 belonged to humanity. Vecran fighters burned in the atmosphere below, while human troop transports descended toward the surface. Sergeant Junho felt the transport shudder as it entered atmosphere. His squad sat in 2 rows, locked into their powered armor, checking weapons one last time. The mission was simple. Capture the Vecran military command. Center on Proxima 7 and secure their communication. Systems. 30 seconds to landing. The pilot announced. The transport doors blew open, and Junho's squad rushed out into smoke and chaos. They had landed in the middle of a Vecran military base, and the enemy was not happy about it. Energy beams stitched across the landing zone. One of Junho's Marines went down, his armor smoking. Suppressing fire, Junho roared, "Move to cover." Now. His squad spread out, their weapons chattering. Vecran soldiers fell back, surprised by the ferocity of the human attack. Junho led his team through the base, room by room, clearing each one. The fighting was brutal and close. No time for finesse, just raw violence. A Vecran soldier jumped out from behind a corner, weapon raised. Junho was faster. His rifle barked 3 times, and the alien went down. He kept moving, kept pushing forward. The command center was a fortified bunker at the heart of the base. Junho's squad set breaching charges on the door while human artillery pounded Vecran positions around them. The charges blew, and the Marines poured through, guns blazing. The Vecran commander inside tried to reach for a weapon, but Junho shot it out of his hand. The alien froze, staring at the human soldiers surrounding it. "Secure the room," Junho ordered. Then he walked to the communication console and activated it, broadcasting on all Vecran frequencies. "This is Sergeant Junho of the United Earth Marines. This is for Taiyang. Remember that name? Across 18 systems, the pattern repeated. Vecran fleets shattered. Military bases captured or destroyed. Shipyards reduced to wreckage. In 72 hours of continuous combat, the Vecran Collective's military power was broken. Commander Haiyan aboard the Retribution had his own mission. Intelligence had identified the Destroyer of Worlds, the very ship that had led the attack on Taiyang. It was here, in this system, trying to rally scattered Vecran forces. "All ships, target that dreadnought," Haiyan ordered. "I want it crippled, not destroyed." Not yet. The Retribution and her escorts closed in on the Vecran flagship. It was a monster of a ship, twice the size of Haiyan's battlecruiser covered in weapons. But it was alone and outnumbered. The Vecran commander War Master Krell opened a communication channel. Its image appeared on Haiyan's screen, an alien face twisted with desperation. "Why do you not accept our surrender?" Krell demanded in broken human language. "We offer terms. We offer peace." Haiyan's voice was ice cold. "You gave Taiyang no chance to surrender. You gave them no terms. You gave them no peace. You gave them only death." He cut the channel and gave the order to fire. The Retribution's weapons hammered the Destroyer of Worlds, systematically destroying its engines, its weapons, its shields. The great ship that had murdered 40,000 humans died slowly, piece by piece, when it was finally crippled and helpless. Haiyan watched escape pods launch from its hull. His tactical officer looked at him questioningly. "Sir, should we let them go?" Haiyan said quietly. "Let them escape. Let them go home and tell their people what happens when you attack humanity. Let them spread the fear." Across the Vecran Collective's territory, surviving ships and soldiers fled toward their homeworld. They carried stories of human fury, of the overwhelming assault, of the precision and power of Earth's fleets. Within a week, 10,000 Vecran ships clustered around their homeworld in a desperate defensive formation. Admiral Vestno gathered his forces and jumped to Vecran Prime. When the human fleet emerged from quantum space, they came in such numbers that their running lights blotted out the stars. 3,000 warships surrounded the Vecran homeworld, guns aimed at the planet and the cowering fleet around it. Minicho broadcast a simple message to the Vecran High Council. "You have 1 hour to decide. Surrender completely, or we reduce your world to ash. Choose." The Vecran, for the first time in their species' history, chose to surrender. The Vecran homeworld turned slowly beneath its crowded orbital space. 10,000 alien warships sat powered down and helpless, surrounded by human vessels that outnumbered and outgunned them. The night side of the planet blazed with lights from cities that housed billions of Vecran civilians, all of them now at humanity's mercy. Admiral Minho stood at the viewport of the Indomitable, looking down at the world below. He could give one order, just one, and those cities would burn like Taiyang burned. Every Vecran life could be ended in minutes. Payment in blood for the 40,000 dead. But that wasn't why he was here. "The Vecran High Council is ready to receive our delegation," reported his aide. Minho nodded. "Tell Counselor Yunji and Commander Haiyan that we depart in 10 minutes. The shuttle ride down to the surface was quiet. Counselor Yunji, who had opposed the war from the beginning, sat across from Minho with her hands folded in her lap. Commander Haiyan stared out the window at the planet below, his face unreadable. "You were right to argue for restraint," Minho said to Yunji. "We needed that voice, that reminder of who we are." "But you were right too," Yunji replied softly. "They had to be stopped. I see that now." The shuttle landed at the Vecran capital, in a plaza surrounded by their tallest buildings. Armed Marines secured the area while the delegation walked toward the council chambers. Vecran civilians watched from windows and doorways, their alien faces showing fear and confusion. The High Council chamber was a vast circular room with the Vecran leadership seated in a ring around the center. Minho, Yunji, and Haiyan walked to the middle and stood there. 3 humans facing an entire civilization's leadership. The Vecran matriarch spoke first. Her words translated by human computers. "We offer tribute. We offer territory. We offer vassalage. Name your price for mercy." Counselor Yunji stepped forward. She had been chosen to speak for humanity, to present their terms. When she spoke, her voice carried through the chamber and was broadcast to every Vecran world. "You will dismantle your offensive military capability immediately. You may keep defensive forces only, subject to human oversight and inspection. You will open all your territory to human observers who will ensure compliance with these terms. You will provide reparations, not as treasure for us to hoard, but as funds to rebuild human colonies and support the families of those you killed." The matriarch listened, her alien features unreadable. When Yunji paused, the matriarch spoke again. "These terms are harsh, but acceptable. What else do you demand?" "One more thing," Yunji said. "You will erect a monument on your homeworld, in your capital city, visible to all. It will bear the names of every human who died at Taiyang. Every single one of the 40,000, and it will burn with an eternal flame to remind your people forever of the cost of attacking humanity." Silence filled the chamber. The Vecran counselors looked at each other, perhaps expecting some trick, some harsher demand. But that was all. The matriarch stood slowly. "You could destroy us. You have the power. We have destroyed 12 other species who stood in our way. Why do you not do the same to us?" Admiral Minho answered this time, his voice hard but fair. "Because we are not you. We did not come here for genocide. We came for justice. But make no mistake, we will never forget what you did. The stars are now crowded with human warships, and they will remain that way. Not to conquer, not to enslave, but to ensure this never happens again." The matriarch bowed her head, a gesture of submission. "We accept your terms." The treaty was signed that same day. Human observers began spreading through former Vecran territory immediately, shutting down weapons facilities and monitoring compliance. The work would take years, but it had begun. Lieutenant Sira oversaw the installation of monitoring stations throughout what had been the Vecran Collective. She worked with teams of engineers and intelligence specialists, building a network that would watch every move the Vecran made. It was tedious work, but necessary. Captain Doyen took his stealth frigate Silent Arrow back out into the dark. But now he wasn't hunting enemies. He was patrolling borders, watching for threats, protecting human colonies from other predators that might be lurking in the galaxy. There were no more surprise attacks on his watch. Ensign Hannah's promoted to lieutenant after her combat record, found herself training new pilots. She taught them everything she had learned in the battle for Proxima 7. How to stay calm under fire. How to trust your wingman. How to come home alive. She still had nightmares about the pilot she had lost. But teaching helped. Sergeant Yunho returned to Earth to a parade and medals and crowds cheering his name. But he couldn't enjoy it. He kept thinking about his Marines, the ones who didn't make it home. He visited their families, one by one, and tried to explain that their sons and daughters had died with honor. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. 3 months after the war ended, Commander Hyen stood on Vakrin Prime, watching as construction crews put the final touches on the memorial. It was a massive black stone monument, 50 feet tall, covered with names. 40,000 names. Glowing softly in the light of the eternal flame that burned at its base, he found Park's name among the thousands. Administrator Park, who had been his friend. Park's wife. Park's 2 children. All of them there on the stone. Remembered forever on an alien world light years from home. A group of Vecran children walked past the memorial, their teacher explaining what it meant. Hyen watched as the young aliens looked up at the names, their faces solemn. They would grow up with this reminder, this proof that humanity could not be attacked without consequence. "They'll remember," said a voice beside him. Counselor Yunji had come to see the memorial too. "Every generation of Vecran will grow up seeing this. They'll never forget," Good Hyen said quietly. "Neither should we." Back in human space, the fleet did not disband. New recruits joined every day. New ships launched from expanded yards. Humanity had learned its lesson about the dangers lurking in the stars, and they would not be caught unprepared again. Admiral Minho retired 6 months after the war, satisfied that he had done his duty. But the defense network he created lived on. Human warships patrolled from one end of known space to the other. Listening posts watched for threats. Intelligence gathered information on every species they encountered. When a new alien civilization made contact, seeking trade and diplomatic relations, they were greeted by human ambassadors backed by the visible presence of military might. The newcomers had heard about what happened to the Vecran. They had heard about Taiyang. They understood the message. On Earth, in the rebuilt Taiyang Memorial Garden, families of the lost gathered on the anniversary of the attack. They placed flowers and said prayers and held each other. But now, when they looked up at the night sky, they knew that humanity stood watch. Somewhere out there, crowding the darkness between stars, thousands of human warships protected them. The Memorial Garden had a wall with all 40,000 names, just like the one on Vecran Prime. But here, there was also a plaque with a simple message. They were killed, without warning, without mercy, without cause. We answered with justice. We will never forget. We will never forgive. We will never surrender. Lieutenant Sarah visited the garden sometimes when her work at Fleet Intelligence allowed. She would walk among the names, thinking about the war, about the peace that followed, about the price paid for both. Sometimes she wondered if there was a better way. Humanity could have avoided the conflict entirely. But then she would remember the footage of Taiyang burning, and she knew the truth. There had been no choice. The Vecran had made their decision when they attacked without warning. Humanity had simply responded in kind. But with greater force and clearer purpose, 1 year after the war, Admiral Minho was called back to service briefly to address new graduates at the Naval Academy. He stood before thousands of young officers and told them about Taiyang, about the war, about the responsibility they now carried. "The galaxy is vast," Minho said, "and it is dangerous. There are species out there who see kindness as weakness, who see peace as an opportunity for conquest. Your job is to make sure they understand the truth. Humanity will extend the hand of friendship to those who approach in peace. But to those who raise their hand in violence against us, we will respond with overwhelming force." The graduates stood and saluted as one. They understood their duty. In the Vecran capital, the eternal flame burned beside 40,000 names. Vecran citizens walk past it every day, a constant reminder etched into their collective memory. The monument stood taller than their government buildings, deliberately visible from every part of the city. The message was clear. The message was permanent. The message was true. The colony was annihilated. The stars were crowded with human warships. And the galaxy would never forget what happened when you attacked humanity's children.